But why did you invent such a fantastic story? Do you think me a child?
So, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time is getting a remake soon. I find this decision fascinating. Sands of Time is the next remake in a long trend of games from the PS1 and PS2 eras getting remade for modern/next-gen hardware. From the recent remakes of Resident Evil 2 and 3, to Final Fantasy VII, to the 2 Yakuza Kiwami games, to even the makeover that Halo 2 got back in the Master Chief Collection. Remaking older, nostalgic games is big business right now. And I'm in the age demographic for the Sands of Time remake. I didn't play it, but I was at a formative age when Sands of Time originally came out. Of course, I also remember the day I saw Jake Gyllenhaal in costume as the prince grace my newspaper's movie section, while the movie review below remarked, it's okay, I guess. I watched that movie, by the way. It's okay, I guess. Side note, I find it hilarious that remake Prince looks just slightly more like Jake Gyllenhaal, but not quite. But back to the game. Playing it for the first time this year, I get the sense that this game had its sights laser set on boys my age when it came out in late 2003 on the... Wait, this game had a Game Boy Advance port? Yeah, so on the Game Boy Advance, PS2, GameCube, and original Xbox. And PC. That's where I played it. So, okay, I'm gonna spoil the biggest plot twist in the game and talk about it at length for the rest of the video. If a plot twist from a pretty good 17-year-old puzzle platformer matters to you, or if you still feel fine with buying Ubisoft games after everything that's come out about them this year, well, there is a remake conveniently coming out, I guess. Alright, unreliable narrators. An unreliable narrator is exactly what it sounds like. It's a narrator of a story who is, for some reason or another, unreliable, of course. They tell the story in a skewed, flawed, or outright false fashion. You've seen them around, I'm sure. They're a popular narrative or framing device in film and detective fiction. In his 1982 book, Picaros, Madmen, Naifs, and Clowns, author William Riggin laid out a few archetypes for unreliable narrators and stories. As you may have surmised from the title of that book, there's the madman, a narrator who's telling the story through the lens of either disassociation, trauma, or sometimes outright schizophrenia or other mental illness. The clown, a narrator who doesn't take the story seriously, toying with the audience and telling the story in a playful manner.
Quoth the raven.
Eat my shorts. Bart, stop it! He says nevermore, and that's all he'll ever say. Okay.
The naif, a narrator who is usually earnest but also immature or doesn't see the story in its whole picture.
Hold on there, boy. Are you telling me you're the owner of the Bubba Gump Shrimp Corporation?
Yes, sir. We got more money than Davy Crockett.
The liar, a narrator who deliberately fudges the truth of the story in order to push an agenda or make themselves look better. And finally, the archetype that's relevant to Sands of Time, the Picaro, a narrator who mostly exaggerates and brags. And our prince, our lovable scoundrel fuckboy of a prince, is a total Picaro. Sands of Time's story uses a framing device where the prince is telling alternate timeline Farah the game's story as the player goes through it. At first, this manifests itself in cute ways like the game over screen.
That's not how it happened.
But as the game went on, a lot of the game's story felt very, 2003? An example that stuck with me was that our sexy princess keeps following the prince around and showering him with flirtatious sarcasm throughout the entire adventure, even though the prince negs her and constantly has her crawl through cracks to continue the game. The prince is even like, I realized that I was beginning to fall in love with her. Like, my dude, she is not into you. Quit treating her like this. Farah felt like a token damsel in distress, more of a narrative device than an actual character. And I say it feels very 2003 because many popular action games of that era were still, if not embracing those gender dynamics, then at least looking the other way. And look, I know not every game was like this in 2003, but this was an era when the word gamer was still culturally synonymous with young heterosexual men. Also, Assassin's Creed wouldn't introduce its first female player character for another 9 years, and that was the PlayStation Vita spin-off. But then, Farah dies, and the prince makes some time travel nonsense happen, and now he's traveled back to the title screen where he's telling pre-invasion Farah the whole story. And that's when it clicked for me. Motherfucker's a Picaro. The prince is super attracted to Farah, so it makes sense that he'd be like, oh yeah, we were super flirty that entire time. I was so cool, I killed so many sand zombies, I did the Marvel vs. Capcom Wesker super in the elevator, and now I'm here to undo all the bad stuff that I'm about to do. And Farah totally sees through it.
But why did you invent such a fantastic story? Do you think me a child?
And then a novel thing for a 2003 video game happens. The prince leans in and kisses Farah, and she's actually like, no creep, I don't want that.
I said I owe you thanks. You presume too much.
And that impressed me. I was not expecting a game of this era to do something like that. It used unreliable narrator tropes to flip the era's audience's expectations on their heads. That was what I thought when I finished this game. A lot has come out about Ubisoft since then.
Well, the company announced this weekend that 3 of their top executives will be stepping down. That's their creative director, Serge Asquin, the CEO of their Canada office, Yanis Malin, and Cécile Cornet, the global head of HR, who reportedly covered up this huge climate of workplace bullying and harassment within the company.
Ubisoft faces multiple serious, strong and credible accusations of systemic abuse at every level of its company. From uncomfortable atmospheres to threats and insults to physical assault and rape, the stories finally being acknowledged about Ubisoft are as heartbreaking and terrifying as they are grotesque and numerous.
After hearing the many stories about the people that Ubisoft protected, the people that used their power and influence to assault others and create an atmosphere of fear and control, I can't take what Sands of Time did seriously anymore. Why should I? Did Ubisoft? Why should I take this twist on toxic masculinity in video games seriously when this was happening in the company that published it? The revelations at Ubisoft this year, to me, absolutely obliterate everything this game achieved back in the day. It's a farce now. It's a joke. It's a parody directed inward at itself. That's not even the first time that's happened this year, by the way. The recent allegations towards Chris Avellone have basically ruined Planescape Torment, Jedi Fallen Order, and KOTOR 2 for me in the same way. And the frustrating part is that even as Ubisoft still has significant work to do and is committed to this process, that remake is probably still going to be successful. And I understand why. If you're willing to ignore everything that's happened at Ubisoft over the years, Sands of Time is a pretty good game. If this were made by a different studio or a different publisher, this would be worth a remake. If this is one of your old favorites, I don't find joy in tampering that enthusiasm. I didn't come out of playing this game wanting to be a downer or pessimistic. A lot of effort went into both this game and its upcoming remake. But if you're going to pick it up, remember who originally published this game, and consider what that publisher did and the culture it was made under.